Right.
All right, we are recording.
Excellent. And we just hit 90 at 9:05. So here we are. Nice round numbers. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for joining us for this week's water issues seminar. We're really excited to have Dr. Keith Fusinski with us from EPA Region 5. He has been a toxicologist at Region 5 in the Superfund division since 2008. He provides technical advice on human health concerns in regards to Superfund sites, and he is a risk communication specialist in the Superfund division. So, Keith, thank you so much for joining us. I think you brought a couple of other EPA folks with you, and that's awesome. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'll hand it over to you, and I will monitor the chat if people have questions throughout. Would you prefer to take questions as you go or at the end?
Let's keep them all at the end, because like I said,
Okay.
This is actually a relatively short, it's like 35-minute presentation, and we'll have plenty of time to talk at the end.
Sounds great.
That
Thank
way I
you.
won't break my flow. All right, I'm gonna shut off my camera just so I save bandwidth. Okay, so we're gonna talk about the introduction to risk perception, risk communication, and empathy. My disclaimer, this is not a part of the United States government or the US EPA. These views are expressly mine and my own. It does not reflect those of the US government or the US EPA. So that's why I said you can record it. So today's discussion, we're going to talk about risk perception, the importance of building trust in risk communication, the empathy or the role of empathy in risk communication, and all that sits under the umbrella of risk communication. So the risks that kill people and the risks that alarm them are often completely different. This is going to be a reoccurring trend that you'll pick up as you're talking to people at community meetings. You will, as they voice their concerns, this phrase will start popping up in your head. But the risks that kill people and the risks that alarm them are often completely different. So what is risk? Well, according to the National Academy of Sciences, risk is a real or perceived threat of something someone holds of value. It could be property, it could be their health, it could be the individuals that they love and care for, and it could be just their life in general. Anything that they hold of value, and it's a real or perceived threat. Perceived, once again, being a very important term here. For us, the regulators, risk is an equation. Risk equals toxicity times exposure. It's a chemical, the toxicity of a chemical times how people are exposed to it, how long they're exposed to it. And it gives us a number. And that number tells us if it's an acceptable or unacceptable risk. Risk is based upon the science. For the public, it's a different equation. Risk equals hazard times outrage. Hazard is an unknown. It's a chemical they've never heard of that shows up in their drinking water. It's a volatile compound coming up into their basements. And it's outrage. Outrage is emotional. It's fear. It's anger. So risk to them is a perception. For us, it's science. To them, it's a perception. So we have to deal with that perception. So what is perception? Perception can be defined as a recognition and interpretation of sensory data. Basically, we bring in information from the outside, we process that information, and we react back to our environment based on how we process that information. I want to show you a video real quick, show you how this comes into play.
I'm going to play a recording of people chanting, "That is embarrassing," 4 times. After the 4th time, write down what you hear. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. Interesting. Almost everyone here heard "that is embarrassing." Listen again and watch the screen. That is embarrassing. 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 You heard the same thing every single time. Our eyes and ears take in electrical signals which our brains interpret based on our expectations. We don't see reality. We see our reality.
So based on that, I'll just let you all read this to yourselves for a minute. So understand that we don't see reality. We see our own reality. Most people would read this as, what if I told you, you read the first line wrong, same with the second, also the third, but as you can see, the first 3 lines are not written that way. Perception is a key thing when it comes to risk communication. So our perception of the world is skewed based upon the inputs we receive and, more importantly, what we expect to receive. Risk perception is defined as people's judgments and assessments of hazards that might pose an immediate or long-term health threats to their health and well-being. Once again, the risks that harm people and the risks that alarm people are often completely different. So what is an acceptable risk? Instead of talking about what the numbers mean, we can do that during the question and answer period. We'll talk about this instead. Have you heard about 1,3,7-trimethylxanthine? It's FDA approved for use in many foods and beverages, most of which are consumed by children. This chemical's got some bad things with it. It causes frequent urination, accelerated heart rate, upset stomach, nervousness, shaking, insomnia. It's been linked to osteoporosis. It causes many psychological problems such as anxiety, depression, and hyperactivity in children. Additionally, it increases appetite, increases cortisol levels, insulin, and glucose. All of these lead to increased weight gain, and we have an obesity epidemic in this country. But the FDA says that this chemical is fine for kids to ingest, and there's really no limit on how much they can ingest. You scared yet? 1,3,7-trimethylxanthine is caffeine. Everyone, hold up your coffee cups that you're drinking right now this early in the morning. Health benefits of caffeine: increases memory and attention span, helps detoxify the liver. It's used as a treatment for ADHD in children, stimulates hair growth, wards off Alzheimer's, actually eases depression, and the list goes on and on with the health benefits. But how you feel about that chemical is basically how you were introduced to that chemical and who introduced you to it. Was it a trusted individual? And those things all play a role in your perception. What you know and how you feel about anything is based typically upon input from your environment and mostly your expectations. It's all a matter of perception. And yet perception of risk can be modified. So let's talk about some modifiers of risk perception. So dread is the first. What's scarier, shark attack or vending machines? Most people would say a shark attack, but in reality, you're more likely to be injured or killed by a vending machine than you are a shark. But sharks are scarier, so the risk perception of them is higher. Control. There's a big difference if you're driving a car or if you're a passenger of a car. I know there's many times where I'm in the passenger of the car and I'm driving with someone and they're coming up to a stop sign and it feels to me like they're not stopping fast enough, so you hit that imaginary brake pedal on the passenger side that doesn't exist. But according to the driver, they're doing fine and driving. There's no problem whatsoever. So if you have control of the situation, your perception of risk is lower than if you don't have control. And origin, if it's natural or man-made. There's a lot of people who say, no, I don't want to live anywhere near a nuclear reactor. I can get cancer from the radiation. But yet, when the summer comes, they're laying out on the beach all weekend long trying to get a tan. Still radiation, still causes cancer, but one's natural, one's man-made. There's a higher risk perception when something is man-made. And choice plays a big role. If you choose to put yourself into a risky situation, you have actually less perception of risk. There's a big difference between airplanes flying over your house, dumping a vector control, than you using that same vector control in your house in a can of Raid. Because you chose to use it in your house, your perception of risk is lower, even though it might be the same chemical. Any effects on children? Chemicals in the workplace? We expect that. We have these chemicals in the schools, there's issues. There's a higher level of perception of risk. Familiarity. When COVID first came out in 2020, we shut down the world. We didn't know anything about it. It was a big deal. Now people are like, oh, we got COVID. I'm going to go take a couple of days off work. No big deal. So familiarity changes your perception of risk and awareness. The news will tell you anytime there's been a plane crash, and people get afraid of flying because of that. But they never tell you how many successful flights there are every day. And because we're aware of the disasters of plane crashes, and we're not aware of all the successes of plane crashes, we have a higher perception of risk when it comes to flying. And last of all, trust, but we're going to talk about trust later. So how others perceive issues is important when you consider communicating risk. Risk perception has its roots in cultural and social factors known as risk conflict. We're going to talk about each of these: differential knowledge, fairness, value differences, and trust. So differential knowledge. We, as the regulators, we know stuff. We know the science. We know what's in the water. We know what the safe levels are. But the public knows about their community. They know, what they've been exposed to. They know, if we're dealing with something like in a Superfund program like I deal with, if there's a contaminated site in their neighborhood, they know the history of the site. They know where stuff has been buried. People in the neighborhood may have worked at that facility, and they can tell us stuff that we as regulators don't know. So we really have to include them when we talk about risk. Sharing information between the public and letting us know what their issues are while we let them know what our issues are. That sharing actually becomes, lowers that perception of risk. Fairness. I won't say the words this goes to, but we all know that where the incinerators and the dumps have been placed are not in the very rich, affluent neighborhoods. They tended to go to the poorer neighborhoods and communities of color. And so pollution is not distributed equally. So fairness plays a role in risk conflict. Value differences. Individuals place value on things differently. If you have a lake that a family goes and visits 2 weeks out of the year for a vacation, they have a set of values for that lake based upon, we're going to make family memories. We're going to, just go visit that lake. We like going there. It gets us away from all the, everything that we deal with every day. But that lake has a different value when it comes to someone who lives on that lake, and their families live there for generations, and they depend on that lake for subsistence fishing, and they depend on that for their food. They have a different value for that lake. We have to know how they value that lake. And along with that, regulators use assumption to assess risk. I have this huge, when they used to actually print, it used to be a huge bound volume called the Exposure Factor Handbook. Now it's online. And this uses a bunch of surveys, to see what people do, how much dirt they eat, how much fish people eat, what kinds of fish they eat, how long they do Tai Chi in a park, how long does a kid play baseball on a field. All these things are in that book based on surveys across the country. However, if you're dealing with a tribal nation, everything in that book is pretty much worthless because they have a different set of values than what a typical American has. So we really got to, build relationships with these communities, especially tribal nations, so they're willing to share how they use their resources, how they value things, so we know how to include that stuff when it comes to determining if there is a risk to them or not. And lastly, people respond to hazard and social influence transmitted by friends, colleagues, and family by trusted public officials, which leads me to my next topic, which is trust. This next slide is really sad. This is a survey that's done by the Pew Research Center showing trust in the government. Basically, how many people, what's the percentage of people who trust the government in Washington to do what is right just about most of the time? And right now, we're about 17% of the country who actually believes that Washington is, and this is actually up until last month. We're federal government is falling lower and lower in how people trust us, and that's reflected here. And we have a big hill to climb, because understand that as a government official, whether it be state or federal, there's a public perception of government officials. Before we even walk in the room, before we get on the phone and talk to them, before we ever show up to the site, they have a preconceived notion of government employees. We are lazy, we are dishonest, we are incompetent jerks. So us building trust with them is an uphill battle. In fact, this is the hill. So this is trust and credibility. And to the right or to the left, you see the most level of trust, and that is with local citizen representatives. Now, this is not, politicians that they voted into office. This is Mary, who lives on the corner. She's been our spokesperson for this site for years. So anything, questions we have, we go to Mary because Mary knows everything. She distributes information to us and we give her information, and she's our local citizen representative. After that comes non-management employees, nurses and physicians, police and fire chief, professors to educators, nonprofit health organizations, professional societies, environmental groups, industry officials. Oh, we're at the end. That's where we're at, state and federal employees. In fact, right now, I'd probably say state is above federal. So what happens to us, especially in like the Superfund program, when there's an incident, what we do is we try to put ourselves here with the police and fire chief. That way we're with a more trusted official. For long-term projects, we'll set up a community activist group, and we'll have Mary sitting on that community activist group. So we can explain things to her, and she can take that information to the community, because she is a trusted resource that they trust her. So they'll listen to her more than they'll listen to a government employee that comes in and says, this is what we're going to do, and this is why it's right. If we get her on our side, then we have a better chance of the community is trusting what we're saying. But I mean, why should we even involve the public? Why don't we just, if they don't trust us, why don't we just go in, do our work, and be done? Aesthetically speaking, if we involve the public and we have a successful project, what the public does, they tend to talk to their politicians, their representatives, and saying, hey, this agency came out, they helped us, they listened to us, they took our concerns to heart, and they fixed it in a way that was beneficial to us, and they worked with us very well. And then when it comes to talking about funding, those politicians, they helped our constituents. Maybe we want to help them, give them more money to do their work better, and more funding allows us to do our jobs better. Now, EPA used to have an approach where we didn't involve the public. We just went in, did our cleanups, and we left. Did we have successful projects? Yeah, but the public was still upset with us because we didn't include them. They weren't part of the process. They weren't part of the decision making. And we just, we went over their heads. We did what we did, and we left. Well, we changed our approach now, where we involve them, and now the communities that we work with tend to, like us more and trust us more. So how do you build trust? Know your audience. When you're going to go talk to the audience, look to see if we have a community involvement plan. Are you talking to scientists? Or are you talking to farmers? I was at a meeting once in Detroit, and it was a group of presenters that were going to present, and the first presenter was a analytical chemist. And when he talked as an analytical chemist. So he was way above where the residents of Detroit were at. And like halfway through his presentation, most of the people have zoned out or left the room. So they couldn't hear the rest of the presentations for the other people, the person the RPM who was actually there to fix everything for them, because he didn't adjust his talk to his audience. They just didn't care anymore, and they left. You have to remember that statistics and probabilities don't answer all questions. They actually really don't answer any questions. And we have to be sensitive to their fears and worries on a human level. You can't just come in and start throwing all this technical jargon at them, because they just don't get it. They don't care. It's not that they don't get it, they don't care. Trust and perception go hand in hand. If you build trust with the public, there's a greater chance they will understand our definition of risk. I didn't say they will accept our definition of risk, but they will at least, if we build trust with them, they will make an effort to at least understand where we're coming from. So there are two major methods to reduce risk perception. And this is not just risk perception, this is communication in general. This doesn't just work with residents. This works with any relationship you have, be it personal, professional, romantic, what have you. One is justifying emotions. Let them know that it's okay to be upset. And the other is active listening. And the way I talk about this is stop talking. Let them talk. So we'll go through both of these. So there are 6 basic emotions that humans feel: anger, fear, disgust, sadness, surprise, and happiness. Typically, when we walk into a room to talk to residents, we're dealing with one of the first 4, or all of the first 4. Sometimes we might get surprised, but that surprise normally reverts to one of the first 4. We never walk into a room full of happiness. But these people are upset. You know, they have this chemical they've never heard of in their drinking water. They've been drinking it for years. They're allowed to be upset. They should be upset. Will they be screaming at you? Yes. You can't take it personally. But these people should be allowed to be upset. And you can tell them. You should tell them. You were justified to be upset with this situation. I mean, the EPA's remedial program can take decades to clean up a site. These people are not happy. And we can tell them it's okay to be not happy. They have every right to be not happy. One thing I will say is never, ever, ever tell someone, I know exactly how you feel. And then you go into your, because this happened to me. Don't ever do that to anybody, because what you do is you alienate them. You shut them down and you disregard their situation and their feelings. And you basically just hijack the conversation. But let them know that, if I was in your shoes, I would be upset too. I would be scared. And the other thing that goes with this is active listening. This is the most powerful method in all communication situations. It's being in the moment. Listen without interruption. Make eye contact. Give affirmative understanding statements. Do not interrupt. And at the end, say, if I understand you correctly, you're saying this. We have this tendency of when people are talking to us, we're building responses in our head. And we want to interject and we want to correct them. They say something blatantly wrong. No, that's not how it happened. This is what really happened. Don't do that. Let them talk. Listen. They may go through a list of things that's upsetting them, and at the end, you find out later it's because their daughter's sick with this disease, and that's really why they're upset. They could have a list of things, but that their main issue is that last point. And if we disregard that because we're too busy making up responses in our head, it does no good. So we have to learn to stop reacting and let people talk. Let them tell their stories. And understand they're not mad at you as a person. They're not upset with you. They're upset with their situation. So when they're done talking, say, if I understand you correctly, you're saying this. And if you do say exactly what they said, those barriers between you come down because you took the time to actually listen to them.
Thanks. I'll go
And
look at it.
if you get something wrong, they might actually just correct you, and then you go on and go through it again, and just make sure that you know exactly what their issues are. And the only way to really learn that is by letting them talk. I'm going to show you this video. Understand that this is a skit, but it demonstrates this whole concept.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me, and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's gonna stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever gonna stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See, you're
out.
not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Come on, if you would just...
Don't.
Okay, that was fun. So once again, that was just a skip, but it understands that, we have this mindset of trying to fix the public's problem. But if we don't listen to what their problems really are, we really can't fix the problems. So active listening, is make sure you understand what their issues are, to clarify and understand facts, feelings, and issues, to check your perceptions and create trust and build a positive relationship. If you take the time to listen to the public, they'll have a lot more respect and trust in us. If we just run in and tell what we're going to do and leave, it does absolutely no good. It takes a long time to build trust. It takes a moment to destroy it. So we have conditions of trust. There's 4. 1 is commitment. We are judged according to the commitment we show in reaching common goals. This includes providing accurate information and allowing them to participate in the decision-making decisions. Another condition is competence. We must show technical competence in our area of responsibility. If you're going to give a presentation to the public, I would suggest practicing that presentation out loud at least 3 times. If you have a group of your peers that you can grab and throw into a conference room and have them watch you give your presentation and give you honest critiques, do that. It'll make you a better presenter and make you more comfortable presenting the information that you have. Limit use of index cards, written notes, and speeches, because you are the expert. You should know what you're talking about before you walk in there. And more than anything else, be relaxed. A lot of people, public speaking puts them on edge. Relax, take your time. At the beginning of every time you change a slide, stop and take a breath. Just reset your body and relax. You'll come off as a lot more competent if you do that. Honesty, we must show credibility, objectivity, and sincerity. If someone asks you a question in a public meeting or even on the phone, whatever it is, and you don't know the answer, tell them, don't make something up because it'll come back to bite you. Tell them, I really don't know that answer right now, but I will go back to the office, find out what the information is, and get back to you. And do that. The very next day or, as soon as possible, find out that information and get back to them. Don't make them wait. Be punctual, let them know. And empathy. We're going to talk about empathy. We are judged according to our behavior and concern we share for the public. This includes our ability to listen and see their point of view. Rarely does a response fix the problem, but the connection does. So let's talk about empathy. The ability to understand what other people feel and see their points of view and imagine yourself in their place. It's the greatest tool we have to resolve conflict, increase community cohesion, dissolve another person's pain, and to gain trust. And gaining trust is really our ultimate goal here, because if they don't trust us, we're not going to be able to help them. So you all took a questionnaire. I'm not going to ask you what the results of that questionnaire is, but I will tell you what the results mean. So Simon Baron Cohen, who is the cousin of Sacha Baron Cohen, or Borat, is a psychologist, and he developed this 7-point scale for empathy, roughly equivalent to the scores that you got from your questionnaire. So 0 to 11 is absolutely no empathy, can hurt a person, but has 0 remorse. There's 2 types of these. One is 0 negative, that's a psychopath, narcissist, borderline personality disorder, or 0 positive, which is a autistic person who they're on the low end of the autistic spectrum and they just don't understand. There's people who choose to be non-empathetic, or people that just can't be empathetic, not of their own choosing. 12 to 23 is capable of hurting others, but can reflect on what they have done and can show regret if advised of wrongdoing. I will consider this like the first few seasons of Big Bang Theory. If you watch Sheldon, That's where he was at in the beginning of the series. 23 to 35, you have enough empathy to realize that they've hurt someone through social cues. This is pretty much Sheldon in the middle series. And 36 through 47, a person knows they have difficulty with empathy and may try to mask it or compensate for it. This is Sheldon at the end of the series. 48 to 59 is low to average empathy, would prefer doing something technical than dealing with emotions. Most men fall here. Well, if you remove the nail, you won't have any more issues. That's basically how a lot of men think. 60 to 71 is marginally above average empathy. Friendships are based on emotional intimacy, sharing confidences, mutual support, expression of compassion. Most females fall here. And 72 to 80 is remarkable empathy, continually well focused on other people's feelings, well-being, constantly goes on their way to check on other people to give emotional support. Now, mind you, if you get up in like the 78, 79, 80 realm, there's a thing called toxic empathy, where these people are so focused on taking care of other people that they forget to take care of themselves. These are the people you really have to check on, like make sure, did you eat today? Did you make sure that, did you get enough sleep? Are you taking your meds? Whatever it is, but, make sure these are the people that give so much to other people that they forget to take care of themselves. Empathy is a good thing. Too much empathy can be harmful. So why do we take the quiz? Well, realizing where you fall on the empathy scale will help you to better understand your ability to empathize with others. And if you have low empathy, there's books, there's YouTube videos on the topics of either empathy or emotional intelligence. Use those, because empathy is one thing that you can grow if you want to. Because your ability to empathize with others, to put yourself in their place, will better allow you to relate to your community's perception of risk. And that's really the whole goal here. If you can relate to their perception of risk, then you've built a bridge that you can pass ideas over. Remember that facts have little to do with people's fears and perceptions about the risk. People want to know how much you care before we know how much we know. So take-home messages for this. Told you it was short. Once we built a relationship with the community, then and only then should you start communicating risk. Just going there and starting throwing out numbers means absolutely nothing to them. Going there and showing that you care about the community and then giving them the numbers makes them more receivable to the community. Remember, it takes a long time to build trust, but just a moment to destroy it. Facts have little to do with people's fears, perceptions, and concerns about risk. And realize that nobody sees reality. We see our own reality. And most importantly, it is not about the nail. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation. As government employees, it's obviously really relevant to what we're doing and how we can try to communicate our work to the folks that we work for. So at this point, I'd love to open it up to any questions. I don't see any in the chat yet, but definitely folks feel free to raise your hands if you'd like to ask anything. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. My question is related to working with partners such as city, county, other local units of government where their political pressure or etc. is different than what we are. We are a science-based, data-driven organization, while the politicians, they're about, trying to please their constituents. So, how do we get our message across when the elected official in a small town in Minnesota is saying, we don't see a problem with groundwater contamination from this source? How do we work with them? Thanks.
And that's really why we really have to build these bridges and work with the not the politicians, but like I said, that community advocate, that outspoken person in the neighborhood. Those are the people we have to build the relations with, because those are the people they might they might trust the politician. Politician is still a politician. So you really got to build those relationships with the local community organizers. because those are the people that, if we get them to understand our messaging, then they can take it to the people. That's why we have to work through others and build those bridges of trust, because the politicians are, we don't see a problem. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But we know there's a bigger issue. If we get the local people, to understand there's a bigger issue, they can fight back against their own politicians.
Yeah, thank you for that question. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you so much. Very informative presentation. I really appreciate your insights and overview of all these different social and psychological items at play in our everyday work. I guess maybe I have a question really having to do with leadership. I think a lot of what we experience at the local unit of government level is when we see erosion of trust because of local elected or appointed officials. And any insights on how to rebuild trust after you get through a phase where your leadership is actively trying to undermine it with your community?
Well, I might give an example because I'm about to go to a site next week, and the issue there was the community's been asking questions of leadership and other agencies, to answer questions, and they've gotten no answers for years. So now I have to go there, with a group of EPA people and try to rebuild trust, because these people don't have any trust of, basically they're local, don't have any trust in their state, and they barely trust federal, which is weird that they actually would trust us more. But you have to get in there and understand that you got to build those relationships and let them know we are not the people that were here before. We're not, we are not the people that did these things to break your trust. It's hard. There's really no one right answer to that, but once again you got to work with the local people, the local voices of the communities, and build those relationships with them. And once you can establish that, hopefully, then you can overcome the past. But it's always going to be those local people who speak out are the ones that you want to build those relationships with. I hope that helps.
That's
Thank
very
you for
helpful.
that.
Thank you.
And how's the best way to do this? Time. It takes time, repetitively checking in with people. Those people, like I said, the people who are the voices for their communities. You really have to, keep going back and checking in with them, seeing how they're doing. They have any issues, any questions, and make sure you make yourself available to those people. It's always going to take time. It's not going to be a one meeting fixes all the problems. Building trust, like I said, takes time. It takes more time once it's broken to rebuild it. But it's going to be, making yourself available to people, making sure that when they do call you and they have issues, you have to set everything else aside, even if you have a meeting coming up or whatever, and I have to take the time out for this person because right now this person is the most important thing, and we have to give them time to talk, to vent, whatever it is, so we can build those relationships with those people, and you use them as I hate to say it, but like a tool to build the relationships with other locals, with the local community. But time is the biggest thing you're going to have to use. There was another question in the chat.
Yeah, there are a couple. Going back to the first one I see here, the recording, I dropped a link to our Water Issues YouTube channel. Compliment from Kathy, who has been with us for a long time, that this is the best summation of risk communication with the public, so that she's seen in 35 years. So thanks for that, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
A question about when the appropriate time might be in a public meeting to correct misinformation.
Well, I'm sort of going to contradict because, like I said, you really don't want to, interrupt them. But it's nice if you can. What's the best time? As soon as possible, really. I mean, because if they get wrong information out there, that information is going to spread. So once you get these relationships built up with the community, it's, you know, if you got to go out there and say, hey, I understand you guys know, I've been hearing this information about this site or whatever it is. This is actually the real, like even when I said before about active listening, where you stop and let people vent, you know, and you repeat back to them as, you know, this is what you said. You're like, okay, well, you did say this, and this is actually wrong. This is how you do it. But a public meeting is the same thing. It's, you know, you guys have heard these rumors and these things going on for years, but this is actually the truth. If you want the data behind the truth, I can get into that for you, or we can, you know, if you want, you know, data to back up what I'm saying, I can show you that. But it's as soon as possible, because the longer you wait um, to to counterpoint misinformation, the more that information is going to stick, because according to them, that's a trusted source. And that's how they're going to, whatever they hear, they're going to hear, and whatever you say, they're going to hear from that, what they're hearing in their heads from their trusted source. So everything's going to be skewed, but as soon as possible, actually.
I'd like to, there's some other questions in the chat too, but I want to kind of build off of that. If the source of misinformation is the trusted community member, how do you address that in real time without the appearance of being confrontational or pitting them as like not the expert? Or how can you work through that information in a sensitive way?
Well, one thing is never attack. You never want to attack it. And one thing, I mean, those trusted community members can be issues if they are, you know, coming at you as a trusted source with the wrong information. But, you know, you can call them out and say, yeah, I understand you've heard that information for a while, but once again, this is actually what happened, and we have things to back that up if you really want to see it. But it's re-educating that trusted source. And what that's the way you have to, you know, one, like I said, make time available to talk to that person over and over, keep trying to build that bridge with that person, because eventually, hopefully, you can get the information into their head where they're like, oh, you know what, I misunderstood it in the past. Maybe I can go forward and put the real information out there. But it's all going to take time. It takes a lot of patience. And just remember, they're not mad at you, they're mad at their situation. And if you get really lucky, you have I have in a couple meetings where you get the loud resident who wants to just yell and scream and complain, and then the entire community tells them to shut up and sit down. That's the best outcome.
Thank you. All right. The framework that you presented is useful in a world where the public is concerned about risk, maybe beyond what is appropriate in some cases. But how might the framework apply when the public does not understand the risk or underestimates the risk, especially when they can be part of the solution to reduce the risk? This is coming from someone that works on climate here. So,
Well, you know, we always have those, you know, my grandfather worked there, my brother worked there, I worked there. None of us have ever had any health problems. We get that all the time. And, you know, everybody's different. But you got to build the trust of the community. It's not a one easy answer. It's building the trust and, yeah, understand that, you know, you may not understand, you know, just cancer alone. Let's just talk about cancer. There's hundreds of things, millions of things that cause cancer. Just because you didn't get cancer from it, you've gotten lucky. But it's, I think I lost the question in while I'm talking.
how do you apply the framework when the public doesn't understand or otherwise underestimates the risk? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's time. You really have to build the trust in order to get them to understand the numbers. That's the issue. I know that, you know, there's, especially when it comes to climate change, there's a lot of pushback on that now. So I'm sorry for those who work in that field, but it's going to be repeating it over and over again to the trusted people where they can get that information out for you. Most of the time, the community themselves are not going to listen to us as individuals. It's going to take a concerted effort to work with those people in the communities who do listen to us to get the information to them, and then they can spread it out to the rest of the community. most likely us walking into a room that tell people something, they're not going to take anything from that. But if you get the rest of the community to work with you, or individuals from the community work with you to get the information out there, then that will help you. But, you know, people are exposed to stuff all the time. Not everybody gets sick from it. It's just the way it is. I hope that answered it.
Yeah, thank you. Carl, feel free to ask a follow-up or raise your hand if you want more information. Sandra had a follow-up question to the correcting at public meetings, but I think we kind of addressed that, which is the best way to do that. Stephen has a question, and I'm going to boil it down. It's long and a good question, and I'm going to paraphrase just for the sake of time, but how do we best engage with community members that are maybe working several jobs or possibly best reached by door knocking, but are in areas where door knocking is discouraged, or hanging flyers on doors may be perceived as like an empty house, susceptible to break-in, things like that. So what's the best way in those like maybe potentially lower income areas or just other places that aren't reached maybe through what we would call regular channels?
Imagination is the best thing. You have to come up with different ways to get the information to them. Mailers is one way. If you know, local libraries, if you have a repository of information somewhere in the community they can easily access, and you have to make sure the message, like I said, if you're talking for, you know, people who don't have the education levels of most of the regulators, you have to take your messages down to a point where they can understand it. And, you know, internet, anytime you can get some sort of social media to get your information out to that, for the residential area, there's a lot of tools out there that we can use now to get information out to them. But, you know, if you can't go talk to them personally, if you can get phone numbers and actually call them and talk to them, that helps. But once again, you know, make sure your messaging is at a level where they can understand it. I think it's a lot of it comes to, there's a lot of new technologies out there that we can use to do that. In fact, we're at a site now where they're doing access agreements to get into homes to do people's work, and the city is about to send out the water bills. So what they decided to do is put the access agreement on a QR code on the water bill, and it's designated for just the people in the community that we want access from. So it's use your imagination to get that information to them in the best way possible. Nowadays, everybody's on their phone, so if you can get it through their phone somehow, then use that. But whatever way you can, use your imagination to get it out to them, and do it however you can. But nowadays, in this society, imagination is key, because there's so many different techniques that we can use now, and new ones are coming out every day. If you have a community involvement team, use them, because they have all the tools. They have more tools every day to access the community. So use them and get them to work for you to get that information out to the residents.
Yeah, thank you. Another question here, if you could give some examples of specific relationship building activities, mostly just public meetings where you sit and listen, or are there other activities or events, and how do you balance building trust and responding rapidly in urgent situations?
So when it comes to public meetings, if you actually want to build trust at public meetings, don't do a public meeting. Do an availability session. Have it out there where people can come out and talk to you one-on-one. That gives them, because a lot of people are afraid in a public meeting setting to raise their hand and talk in front of a group. But if you have an availability session where people can come up to you and talk one-on-one, it's a lot easier to build that trust between the individuals. You getting up there to do a presentation at a public meeting doesn't really help do that, but you working one-on-one with the residents will definitely build that trust. Yeah, emergency responses are different. We do have an OSC from EPA on here, because there are emergencies. We got to get information out there. At that point in time, we can try to build trust, but the issue is we got to get information as much as possible. But even as an emergency response, you have to at least have a team with you that's available to the public. When we did the East Palestine train derailment, we set up basically a public office where we had a bunch of community involvement coordinators, and the public could just come in and talk to us. And people, they come in with their issues, and we talk to them through the entire incident. So we set that up pretty much immediately. So if people had issues, that way the emergency responders can deal with the emergency, and we had the communication team there for the public available to them. We were open like 12 hours a day for 3 months of people coming in and talk to us 7 days a week. You just have to build that infrastructure in to allow people access to your staff.
This is Dave Morrison, EPA. Just another example for St. Paul, Minnesota. We did a cleanup at an abandoned plating shop, and we did door to door. We found a local community leader, and we coordinated a public meeting where they helped facilitate the public meeting. And we posted information, and now, many years later, I still get calls from the public about that site as it became tax forfeiture and they had long-term questions. So be prepared for the long run with your engagement with the community.
Thanks, Dave. And I mean, once you build trust, as long as you do nothing to break it, that trust is forever. And that's a good example, Dave, because people are still calling him years later because he built that relationship up with the community activists, and now he has that bridge built between that community and himself.
Great, thank you. I do see a couple additional comments here. I'll follow up, Keith, with you on these. Mostly a comment about using the empathy questionnaire, and then a suggestion on a creative way to reach out to community members. We've got just a few minutes left. Are there any other questions for Keith while we have him with us? I think this has been a super useful session, and as a kind of mostly scientific technical agency, it's a really important topic for us to grapple with. So I appreciate that you were able to come talk to us today. So thank you for that. I appreciate the questions and engagement in the chat. So thanks, folks. We had a pretty good turnout. So I think, yeah, a lot of people were interested. So and I see Alicia's got something in the chat here too on the quadrants, Peter Sandman's quadrants. The nail in the head video is getting some accolades here. So yeah, thank you very much for your time today, everybody, and especially to you, Keith, for joining us. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. We'll stop recording. Going to end the meeting. Again, thank you